presentation, our virtual online learning. To catch everyone up to speed who might be new today, this is an activity that we will be doing now Monday through Friday for about the next 9 weeks to offer some online programming for our 4-Hers and those who might not be a part of 4-H yet. And that's okay. We want everyone to participate. You don't have to be a part of 4-H. We want all of our youth to be engaged. You can join us if you're in Missouri. You can join us if you're in a different state. We definitely want you here with us. Like I said, we'll be covering a wide variety of topics, everything from animals and nutrition to some outdoor activities, arts and crafts, just about everything that you can find in your Clover. We're going to cover something related to it during these next 9 weeks. So we're very excited to have you all here. Just a reminder again, you don't have to be a part of 4-H to be tuning into this activity. We do want to let you know, though, for anyone that is a 4-H member, that this is meant to be in addition to your traditional project leader-led projects. So this isn't a supplement. That just means that this is an additional resource that we want to provide everyone. Maybe as we're not in school or as we have other activities, we want to give you all something to do that's very 4-H based and great for our youth. We do like to let everyone know that our age ranges are kind of everywhere. For the littler kids, might need a little extra help from our parents or adults that are involved. For some of our older youth, while you might not love all of the activities, keep in mind that you're always looking out for demonstrations and public speaking opportunities and topics that you could use. Some of these that we're going over in the next 9 weeks would be very good options for you to use in the future. You also might be able to help out some of your younger club members for some of these activities. Always great to be doing that. So I just wanted to go ahead and get us started, get us live. Feel free to share this video with anyone who might be interested in our topic today. Again, we're doing sugar, rock candy, and chemistry. So we're going to be talking about a little bit of what that is and how you can make this at home as well. For those that are new to Facebook Live, you can comment or like at any time. We've got a couple colleagues that are going to be watching those comments as they come in, and we'll be trying to answer questions live as they come through. So that's why we're doing this live platform, so that we can really have you all interact with us in real time. Again, just one final reminder that this is for any youth. You don't have to be a part of 4-H necessarily. We welcome all of you here today. We are so excited to be going through Missouri 4-H specifically, so go ahead and share the video out to anyone that might be interested, and we'll get started here in about 7 minutes. Thanks. Hello everyone, and welcome to our 4-H Live online learning platform. I want to welcome everyone who is new today, who might not have joined us for day 1 or 2. We're going to post those videos here shortly to Missouri 4-H so that you can see what we've been doing. Day 1, we made some homemade ice cream and learned about the states of matter. And then day 2, which was yesterday, we learned about simple machines and Rube Goldberg, and we've been creating our own engineering designs. So this week's theme, if you haven't caught on yet, is STEM, or more specifically, food science and engineering. So if you're a youth out there who might be enrolled in some of our food science projects, or if you're just in general interested about STEM, this is a great week to tune in. Tomorrow we've got another STEM topic for you, and we are very excited to share that with you. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Chelsea Corkins. I'm a 4-H specialist in Saline County. I also cover Carroll and Sheraton counties. We are so excited today because State 4-H loved what we were doing and has asked us to do it statewide, which is so amazing. We are very glad to be able to reach out to more youth, more families, because that's what we're here for in 4-H. We want to provide you hands-on learning experiences, even if it's through a computer. So we found some great ways to do that, including doing some science projects with things that you might find around your house. So I just want to welcome you all for coming today. For those who might not be in 4-H who are joining us, one thing that we like to start off with at the beginning of every meeting is we like to do the 4-H pledge. So we're going to do that today. And for those who maybe aren't familiar with the pledge or need a bit of a reminder, don't worry, I've got a list for us here. And for those where Spanish might be more of your first language or a language you're more comfortable with, we've got the Spanish version here and English up here. Okay, so all of our youth, if you could stand up like we always do and say our pledge with us, okay? I might not be able to hear you, but you can hear me. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I pledge my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, my health to better living, for my club, my community, my country, and my world. Awesome, good job. So again, for those who aren't 4-Hers, that's how we like to start out our meetings, remind everyone that we're here for bigger purposes. We are here to make our communities, our clubs, our world a better place. We're also here to learn a little bit today, which is what gets us to our topic of sugar, rock candy, and chemistry. So for those of you who maybe haven't learned about chemistry yet in your formal education, we're going to start talking about that today. It's some pretty cool stuff, I must say. Today, though, we're in the kitchen, as you can see. It's always a good practice before we start doing anything, whether it's science-related or food-related, anything that we might eat, that we kind of sanitize some things first. So I'm sure you've heard a little bit about washing your hands for 20 seconds. Always a good practice. Some other things you might want to do. Use either some disinfectant wipes, or you can always use some soap, a paper towel, some sponges, some things you've got around the house to clean the surfaces we're going to interact with. Because don't forget, if you have something drop on the counter, you want that counter to be as clean as possible. So before we get started, just kind of clean up things around you. I've already gone ahead and sanitized some of our countertops here, our stove top that we're going to be using. Because no matter what's going on in the world, we want to try and be as clean and healthy as we can. Don't worry, we'll be talking more about nutrition and ways that you can clean later on in some of our series, probably I think in week 6 or 7 in there somewhere. Don't worry, it's on our schedule. All right, so we're going to start off today talking about chemistry. All right, well, what is chemistry? Well, one thing that we're going to discuss specifically today are the degrees of saturation. So what does saturation mean? Well, that means how well something is dissolved into something else. So if you watch our first video, we talk about different states of matter, those being solids, liquids, and gas. So if we have saturation, we're taking a solid and we're dissolving it into a liquid. So we're going to talk about the different types of saturation, though, and different levels that we might be at. So our first one is going to be when we take just a little bit of something. So say that this is sugar, maybe a good example for what we're doing today. Maybe it's salt. We're going to take just a few, maybe just 5 or 6 pieces. We're going to put it into our water here. Put that into our beaker of water. So what do we have happen? Well, when we put just a little bit of our solid into our liquid, it remains pretty clear. We're not going to see too much inside of our water, inside of our liquid. So that's what we're going to have happen there. But what were to happen if we put a little bit more in there? So say again, this is our sugar or our salt. We've got a little bit more. Maybe we've got a good handful, kind of a pinch sometimes we call, of putting a little bit more in there. Maybe we've got a bit of a scoop putting in there. Okay, so we've got a little bit more. Now what are we going to call that? What are we going to see what happens there? Well, we might see our solution get a little cloudy. You can see that we've got a little bit of mixture in there. We might be able to see some color changes. Think of when you drop a little bit of Kool-Aid into your water. Maybe not the whole thing yet, maybe just a little bit, a few drops, few little particles of that Kool-Aid. Maybe it starts to turn pink first. That's what we're having here. That is our saturated state. So let me talk about those two first before we get to our last one. So first here, remember we put in just a few little granules, few particles. That's going to be our undersaturated. Okay, so that's undersaturated. Here in the middle, where we're putting maybe a spoonful or so of our Kool-Aid or something into water, that's saturated. So when we're in undersaturated, there's still plenty of room, plenty of liquid there to add more what we call solute. That's what our solid is that we're adding in. So in this phase, we've still got room to add more solute and it'll continue to dissolve. Now as we move into our saturated phase, we're getting more to that equal level where we can't put any more solute in, it's not going to dissolve it, but it's almost to that point where it's balanced out. We have an equal amount of what we need in our solid and our liquid so that it moves into our saturated point. Now, our last one, and hint for a little bit going on here, we're going to do this here in a second with our experiment, is when we take that whole packet of Kool-Aid. Maybe we take even more packet than one packet of Kool-Aid. Maybe we're putting 3 or 4 packages in there. We've got a lot that we're going to dump right into our water. Put that into our water here. what happens? If you've got a lot of your solid and you've dumped that into your water, you're going to end up with a super saturated. See how this is really, really dark? So we're going to end up with a water that's become really, really full. Really, really full of our solute. This means that we've added too much. So two different things can happen at this phase. We can either be heating it up, which we'll do here in a second. Let me write down this being super saturated. So in this example here, we've heated it up, which keeps those particles moving around really fast. Remember, if you go back to our first video, we talk about how with heat, our solids can turn into liquids, or going the opposite way. They're able to stay in water like this so that it's really muddy. It might look not so clear, but if we remove the heat, what do you think is going to happen? If we've got a really super saturated solution and we take away the heat, that means we're going to end up with a solution that's going to reform the solids. This is called crystallization. So at room temperature, we've got these crystals that'll form back into our liquids. So for supersaturated solutions, we have too much of our solid in there. So at hot temperatures, they'll still kind of mix together, but when we let them cool down, they're going to want to be a solid again. Okay, so that's kind of what's going to happen here. We're going to start out with just our water. Maybe we'll add a little bit of our sugar, or if we're working with some other items, we're adding it to our water. We're going to be undersaturated. We add a little bit more, we get to the point that we're saturated. That's usually where we like to eat some of our drink some of our drinks, maybe our Kool-Aid. Then we get to our super saturated, where with heat, we're going to keep it being a little bit cloudy. Then when we move to room temperature, we'll see if we can form those crystals. All right, so we've learned a little bit about what that means as far as chemistry goes. Now we're going to talk about the actual rock candy. Okay, so get your materials that we had listed before. If you didn't have all of them, that's okay. You can always come back and watch this video later. A live video is just live for while we're doing it, and then as soon as we go offline, it's going to post as a full video, so you'll be able to watch that, rewind, pause, get your materials, come back anytime that you'd like. All right, so what we need for today are first our materials as far as what we need to put into the rock candy. So we've got our sugar. Obviously, we're making sugar rock candy, so we want to have our sugar. We also want to have about a cup of water for each youth that's doing this. So if you've got 2 youth, you can bump it up to 2 cups, and we'll just double the amount of sugar as well. So I've got 1 cup here. You can either put that in a measuring cup, or you can measure it out as we get going. We also want something for our water and our sugar to mix together in. So in that case, we've got our saucepan. Doesn't have to be overly big, just enough to hold your 1 or 2 cups of water. We want a spoon so we can mix it up. We've got to keep it mixing. If you let your sugar sit on the burner too long, it can burn, and that doesn't smell very good. So we want to have something to stir it with. We also might want to grab some food coloring. This is pretty fun. I like getting to do a different color every time that I do it. You can also use some food flavoring, peppermint, vanilla. I'm just going with regular sugar today. I didn't want to get too fancy, but I will choose a color here in a bit, so I'll let you choose yours as well. Now, as far as the actual details of what we need for the rock candy, once it's going to crystallize, we need a couple things too. We need our mason jar. You can also use any kind of glass container. Something that is see-through is suggested because then 1, you can see it as it's forming, and 2, this keeps the crystals from forming on the outside quite as much. It helps with some of the glass containers there a little bit. So grab one of those. You don't need to have a lid. It's okay that you don't have a lid. Mine seem to always walk away somewhere, so I usually end up with just the bottles themselves. And then we need a couple items that are going to go inside of our glass container. So I've chosen a piece of cotton yarn today. You can also use a piece of wood, whether that be a candy stick. I've done this with popsicle sticks before. Something that's going to be able to go into that water and form your actual rock candy. We also, if we're using yarn, want something that's going to weigh it down. So I've used a screw that I just found from my toolbox here at home, and I'm going to attach it to there in a little bit. Make sure you clean this up first, kind of run it over under some water and soap. We want to make sure it's just as clean as our countertops are. And then we also want something that we're going to put on top of the mason jar to hold up our string. So I've just used a pen. You can use a pencil, anything that works best for you. We're going to tie it there so it stays in place. All right, so those are our materials for now. So let's go ahead and get started with the actual project. Now, I do want to point out we encourage parent or adult supervision during this part because it does involve a stove, which means that our water's going to get hot and potentially, or should be boiling. So be careful if you're a kiddo out there. We trust you, but we want you to be careful, so make sure you're doing this with an adult. All right, so we're going to start by turning on our stove. Okay, so for those who don't know, usually with the different controllers that you have on the stove, the one that's either a little darker or something is which burner you're using. Don't be like me and turn on the wrong burner when you're not using it. Make sure it coordinates with where you're at on the stovetop. Okay, so you're going to take then your cup of water, and we'll go ahead and pour that into our container. I got it set on somewhere around medium. That's okay to get us started. We want to get to a boil, not quite boil over the whole pot, but we want to make sure that it's kind of boiling a little bit in there. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to turn mine down just a little bit. Okay, so as we're letting that go ahead and heat up, we're going to prepare our string. Or like I said, if you've got a piece of wood, that's okay too. You can use that. But like I said, first thing we're going to do is tie our string to that anchor. You can also use a washer. Metal usually tends to be a good thing to weigh things down. A push pin, things that you've got just around the house. So like I did here, I just tied it around the outside and then tied a knot. I do double knot just in case. So I tied a double knot. And there we go. Woo! See, that's so heavy that it's even falling out of my frame. So that's now going to stay down, and it's going to stay in our solution like that. Okay. So then you want to take your cup, and at least this is the way I like to do it, so I know how long my string needs to be. Now take your cup, take your pen, kind of, balance it on top there, and put this right in front, and then I'll bring it up. All right, so I'm holding this just long enough so that I know where it's going to be if it's touching the bottom. Now, a couple tips on measuring this out. I suggest to not have your cotton yarn hitting the bottom of the container. Sometimes that'll cause your crystals to form on the bottom of your container and then they break off, and we don't want that. So instead, you want to tie it so that your yarn isn't quite hitting the bottom. So I am just tying it around my pen or my pencil. That way it's going to stay right in its place while we set our rock candy up. Okay, so that's tied on there. We've got our weight on the bottom. We've got our pen or pencil that it's tied around. And ideally that'll go right through there. So you'll see that my weight's touching the bottom, but my string's not. And that tends to help it again from not breaking off in there. Okay, so hopefully your water is getting closer to boiling now. We can keep letting it do that as we kind of keep talking through what we're doing. Since we're still kind of waiting on that, we can do the next thing that is called seeding the string or seeding the wood. So this part helps the sugar molecules. So what we're going to do here in a second is we're going to pour our sugar into the water. Well, those sugars are going to become like this. But when they get to room temperature, we want them to not only turn into crystals, but we want them to turn into crystals around the thing we want them to turn into crystals around, which in this case is my string, or might be your wood popsicle stick or candy stick that you're using. So to help do this, to actually get that sugar out of the syrup and go to the place we actually want it to, we are going to seed our string or seed the wood. So the easiest way I find to do this is I like to take a piece of paper and I've poured a little bit of sugar right down here in the middle. It's folded in half. Just kind of gives me a place. You can also do this with a plate, not a problem. But I take my string, and you get it a little wet. So I've gotten my string a little wet before we got started. Just kind of dip it in a thing of water, run it under the faucet just for a little bit. And then we put it right here on our paper, run it through our paper, push it down a little bit, push it down a little bit. You can see how I've got it just sitting there in the middle. Turn my pen around so you can see it a little bit better. So push our string down a little bit into the sugar. You can also set your string on a paper and then take the sugar and dump it on top of the string, that's fine too. All you're trying to do is make sure that that sugar attaches to your string or your wooden rod so that we can see that, that wood or that yarn once we put it into the water. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Like I said, try and get that string or that wood covered as much as you can. This will really help as that super saturated solution turns into a solid, that it's going to actually go where you want it to, which is around your string. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a boil on mine, and I've got mine sitting pretty low, so we're probably ready. If you're still waiting on your water to boil, that's okay. You can go ahead and add some sugar now if you want, and we'll keep adding a little bit more throughout the presentation, or you can wait a little bit and then follow along, catch back up when we get going. No problem, it's not a big deal. You can always catch back up here pretty easily. So, all right, so we are going to start with 1 cup of sugar at a time. So take your sugar, take your measuring cup, your 1 cup measuring cup. I'm going to take out our sugar, and we're going to go ahead and fill that up. So go ahead and fill that up with your 1 cup. All right, so I've got a cup full of sugar here. I'm going to go ahead and pour that into my boiling water. Remember, do this with adult supervision because this water is going to get pretty hot here pretty quick if it's not already. So pour that in, and I want you to notice a couple things. First is that your water or your sugar is going to go to the bottom of your water. Maybe it's going to dissolve a little bit on its own. You might even notice that it kind of looks chalky. It looks like it's become more of it's almost becoming liquid itself. Well, that's exactly what it's doing. That solid is transforming into a liquid, and it's melting into our liquid water. So go ahead and stir it a little bit. That way we don't keep our sugar on the bottom of the pot. And as your solution continues to heat up, you're going to see more and more that sugar is going to dissolve. It's almost going to be like if you're making chocolate milk. So if you make chocolate milk and you put a little bit of your powdered sugar in there, you stir it up a little bit, maybe it dissolves. Well, then you decide maybe you want some more chocolate. So you pour a little bit more chocolate in there, stir it up. Oh, it's not dissolving quite as well. Well, I'm going to keep pouring a little bit more in there. Let me pour a little bit more in. Now it's not dissolving at all. Well, that's exactly what's happening here for us, but we want to get it to that last phase so that we have none that's actually dissolving anymore. So go ahead and keep stirring that solution of water and sugar. And once that whole cup is dissolved, you're going to go ahead and pour in a 2nd cup of sugar. Now, ideally, we'll have between 2 cups to 3 cups of sugar per every cup of water. Really kind of depends what you want to go with. You can try 2 cups, and then I'll give you a bit of a tip at the end of if that doesn't work, how you can continue to try. No need to throw it out. We can keep trying. So, like I said, notice how you're seeing when you pour in that solid that it's kind of becoming chalky a little bit, and then it's going to go ahead and dissolve all the way. So add in that 2nd cup. If you think maybe let's go ahead and add in another 1/2 cup, another 1/3 full cup, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and let that dissolve. Keep stirring, but make sure that you're letting that dissolve so that it's fully saturated. We don't want to get it too far, but it's better if we get it almost too far than if we don't go far enough on our sugar. So I'm going to give mine one final stir. So because I've only added 1 cup, mine's more at the saturated. We want yours to be all the way up here, so that's why you're going to add 2 to 3 cups. Okay, so once it's all dissolved, so this might take you 5 or 6 minutes to get through. Keep on working on it. I'm going to give you the last couple of things we're going to do. There's a couple waiting periods in this process, and that's okay. So we're going to go ahead, and this is where we get to choose the color we want to use. So mine's pretty standard. It's got my red, blue, green, and yellow. You could even mix together some of your colors. I really like purple. What colors do you think you need to mix together to make purple? Hopefully someone knows the answer out there. For purple, we're going to need to mix together red and blue. So I'm actually going to do 2 drops of red and 2 drops of blue so that I can get a little bit of a purple mixture. If you just want one color, that's okay. We're going to do about 4 drops for every cup of water. All right? So I did my 2 drops of blue, and now I'm going to do 2 drops of red. All right, there we go. So we've got 2 drops of red and 2 drops of blue. Okay, so I'm going to let that kind of mix together. You can go ahead and turn off your heat. Once you've dissolved all of your sugar, it's okay to go ahead and turn off the heat. Mix in your food coloring a little bit. So then turn off your heat, and then I suggest letting this cool a little bit. It's not going to hurt it if you let it cool a little bit in the pan. We really want to make sure we're not pouring it when it's too terribly hot, because sometimes that's not great for us. We could end up spilling a little bit, so we want to be careful. So go ahead and let that cool a little bit. Once it's cool, you can pour it into our mixture here. So I didn't heat mine up very much, so I'll go ahead and pour for you all. And that's why I didn't, so that I wouldn't end up hurting myself during this. So go ahead and pour in your mixture. Oops, and that's why we have paper towels on the floor too. If you spill a little bit, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to clean it up really easily. So pour in our mixture. It is a little hot, so again, adult supervision, make sure you're asking an adult to help you with this part. So you're pouring in your mixture, and then go ahead and take your string and your weight and put it on in there. All right, so once you get that done, there's a couple of important things though. We want to make sure that we keep our crystals in a dark and kind of quiet area. Now, why do you think we want to do that? Well, sometimes the sun can heat up the area, so that's going to keep it from moving from this section to this section. If it's loud and noisy, you might accidentally cause some vibrations that cause your crystals to break up as well, and we don't want to do that. So keeping it in a quiet, dark area is a really good idea. And don't be worried if you don't see anything form right away. This is going to take about 2 weeks before you see maximum crystal growth. So this is a great experiment to try over the next couple of weeks. If you don't see something in a week or so, you can also pour your water solution, which is now almost more of a syrupy solution, back onto the stove, heat it back up, and then pour it back into your container. No problem. Just add a little bit more sugar, try and super saturate it just a little bit. Maybe you still kind of were in this zone. We need to get it here, add a little more sugar, pour it back into your mason jar. Awesome. Okay, so I did prepare a couple examples for you all because I want to leave you with one more thing about some scientific approaches and some different things you can change in this experiment. So I made this one first. This is called our control. So this used our yarn, and I went ahead and seeded it, which meant that I put sugar on it to begin with on the yarn. See if I can get that up close. We've got a little bit of crystals forming, some there at the top. Not much. This hasn't been going for more than 2 days, so it's still in the process, but that's okay. This is what we call our control. This is our known, this is our standard that we're going to go by. All of our variables are going to be based off of this. Now, if you want to form a science experiment, what you usually want to do is change one variable at a time to determine if that variable had any effect on your experiment. So I decided I was going to change one thing about the experiment by not seeding my yarn. So we're still using yarn, but I decided to not put that initial sugar on the yarn, see what might happen. So far, we've still got a little bit, but when I measure it, it doesn't look like it's got nearly as much growth on it. So that would be interesting to note that not seeding it might be inhibiting the growth that we're seeing. And then the final one I decided to try was I decided to use a wood stick instead of our string and see if that changed anything. Now for some of these you might have to tape them down a little bit because they won't stay attached to a pencil very easily. But you can tape them down like I did on the side. And so far, I haven't gotten any growth on it. I'll be interested to see if I can heat this one back up and get any growth on my wood stick. So in each one of these, notice that we only change one variable at a time because as good scientists, we want to be able to say what variable or what change did I make that caused the difference. So if you decide that you want to try some different experiments, change some different variables for your next couple of batches, that's awesome. What I suggest that you do is every 2 to 3 days, go back to your mixtures carefully, take the yarn or the wooden stick out, give it a little bit of a measure, or if you're one of our younger kids, take a picture. Then you can compare those pictures from day to day to day to see where you might be at the end of 1 week, maybe the end of 2 weeks, and see how your different variables have changed your growth in your different examples. This is a great way to start recording your results so that when you continue to do more experiments, you'll have an idea of how you might be able to track that over days. Well, that seems to be, I think, the end of where we're at for experiment today. I hope all of you are willing to go out there and try some science experiments on your own. This is a good one to try over a good length of time. Just to review a few things that we went over, we talked about our degree of saturation. First, we talked about undersaturation, then saturation, and then supersaturated. Then we actually did an experiment about how our supersaturated solution here, when we heat it up, is going to be more of a cloudy mixture. But when we let it cool down and get to room temperature, it's going to form those crystals. So ideally, we're going to hopefully see that within a couple of weeks and be able to see how we've moved our supersaturated solution into supersaturated crystals. So thank you all for being here today. I just want to remind you that we'll be doing the same thing tomorrow at 3:30 Central Time. We've had a blast doing these so far. I have really enjoyed getting to do this. Again, my name is Chelsea Corkins. Tomorrow, we will likely have a different presenter. Don't worry, I'll be back later on in some of our programming to do a couple of more activities with you all. I really have a passion for STEM and engineering and hope I could share that with you a little bit today and for the rest of this week as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to message Missouri 4-H. And if you're interested in joining 4-H in the future, absolutely message us and see how you can do that. We are always looking for new members. We're always here to support our youth throughout the state and hope that you can join us someday. Also, keep an eye out for some more activities that State Missouri 4-H is going to be rolling out in the next week. I gotta say, they're gonna be pretty cool. Awesome, well thank you all for joining and please let us know if you have any questions. Bye.